All right. So, I mean, first of all, I want to say I really appreciate you coming on. Um,
It's
it's
16
great to
hours.
have you on. And I probably saw my Instagram story before I was on Instagram. When I wanted to learn about the Philly shell, I was watching your videos on YouTube. There were a couple of guys I was watching. One was yourself, another was I think I'm starting from the same areas as someone called Safe Carmen. But I learned so much from watching your videos at the start. So then to fast forward to now, I had the opportunity to speak to you. It's strange in a way, isn't it? When you sort of meet the guys you've been learning off and watching all these years. But it's really good. So it's really good to have you on. So I want to start from the beginning for yourself, as I do with all the boxing coaches. We tend to hear about the fighters and their backgrounds. We don't often hear about the coaches and how they came to the sport. So, first question I want to ask is, when did you start boxing and why?
I started boxing at around 15 years old. And the reason why I started boxing, well, I've always was interested in boxing. My grandmother used to, because my mother was very young when she had me. She had me at 16 years old. So a lot of the times when I was young, my mother would go out, party, hang out, and I would stay at home with my grandmother and my grandfather. And my grandmother would, say, hey, go to the store, get some snacks, and let's have a party. And I used to get super excited. I'd go buy my snacks, go to the house, and the party was hanging out in the room watching boxing. She loved boxing. She was, I'm Puerto Rican and I'm half Dominican, but I grew up with my Puerto Rican family. And she would just have Telemundo on, and Telemundo would just show fights every Saturday, just the Spanish fighters. So I would just sit there with her eating candy, watching the boxing, and I just fell in love with the sport. But I never actually went through with learning it. I never went to a boxing gym. I never did none of that stuff till I got a little bit older. And then when I became 15 years old, I actually walked into a gym in Queens. I'm from Queens, New York City. And there was a gym in Flushing Meadow Park with Kevin Kelly, former world champion Kevin Kelly was
Yes.
training at the time. And I went in there and, I dibbled and dabbled, didn't do nothing. But then what ended up happening was my mother I grew up with a single mother, but then my mother ended up uh, dating this guy that's my stepfather now. And he ended up getting a lawsuit. He lost a couple of his fingers, and he moved us out of New York City and moved us down to Florida. So when we moved down to Florida, around going on 15, 16 years old, I didn't know anybody in Florida. So I was like, there was nothing but farms and like cows. And it was just like Florida was nothing the way it is today. It was very country. And I was in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I was like, I want to get into boxing. I'm like, I don't know nobody down here. I was a little bit chubby, and I always wanted to lose the weight. And I just felt like boxing would be something that would keep me interested to just lose weight and box. So then that's when I started boxing. They brought me to a gym down there. At the time, it was called Steve Shepard's boxing gym, which eventually turned into the Spartan gym. But Steve Shepard was a former world champion kickboxer, and he was actually partners with Lou Duva, and they used to do promotions
Okay.
together. So I was actually blessed because when I walked into this gym, little did I know I would see guys like Andrew Galata, Vernon Forrest, Zab Judah used to come down and do
Mhm.
camps. Alexis Trujillo, Kasim Uma, Danny Edward. Um, I mean, the list goes on and on. Every top fighter that you could think of in the late 90s, early 2000s trained in this gym year round. So I was just looking at all these top fighters, top trainers, and I didn't know nothing about, Manuel Augustus. How can I forget? And they were just in the gym, and I'm just looking at them saying, damn, I want to be as good as these guys. And I got a chance to really be around them every day in my teenage years. So it was just like, I was just very blessed in that regard. I walked into the right gym at the right time.
Mm. So when you mentioned you're growing up with your grandmother watching the boxing and the Spanish boxing, who were the boxers that were around on TV at a time that you were watching?
I don't really remember those guys. I just remember that they were just the Latino fighters. And of course I fell in love with Felix Trinidad. Felix Trinidad was like because, you know, he was Puerto Rican and he was a true Puerto Rican. Like, he didn't want to learn English. You know what I'm saying? He was like, his energy was like, it was like kind of like yeah, that's a real Puerto Rican right there. Like, he really represented for Puerto Rico. He always had the flag. He was a little darker skin. A lot of Puerto Ricans are like whiter skin. Like my grandmother, she was whiter skin. So he was a little darker skin, closer to my complexion. So it was like, I related to him. I was like, yeah, that's my guy right there. You know what I mean? And Felix Trinidad, he was everything to me in my, you know, early stages of my boxing journey. He was like my favorite fighter.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see which boxers inspire someone to take up boxing or to become a coach, become a fighter, because oftentimes you end up taking those sort of traits from them, the traits they have. And the Puerto Rican boxers, I mean, there's so many of them, such a wide variety of skill. You've got guys like Benitez, a great master of defense. Then you've got guys like Gabe Rosado, who's, you mentioned that, just that warrior mentality, or Wilfredo Gomez, who just knocks you out. Just such a wide variety of skills, but they produce so many great boxers. So it's amazing. Okay, so when did you decide then you wanted to become a coach?
Well, first I wanted to become a fighter. So when I got into boxing and I started competing. So, you know, I fought a little bit. I fought in the Golden Gloves. I fought in the Florida State PALs. I fought in the Sunshine State Games. I fought a bunch of little Florida local shows, and I was in and out of boxing. I wasn't fully in it the way I should have, but I always went to the boxing gym every day, no matter what. Even when I was out of shape, even when I wasn't competing, nothing. I just stood in the gym. And then eventually I was just becoming a guy that would go to the gym, spar with everybody, but didn't compete. So I always held on to this idea of becoming a pro. Like, even at 25 years old, when it was already over for me, I was like, no, I'm still gonna go pro. I'm still gonna do it. And everybody's like, you should have been did it, man. You got plenty of experience. What are you waiting for? And I was just like, no. I just got to get focused. And it was just a bunch of excuses. I had some injuries, but the truth of the matter is I didn't want it bad enough. And then what ended up happening was, ended up moving to New Jersey. I got into a little bit of trouble in Florida. I ended up, going to jail for a little bit. And then what ended up happening was, I moved back to New Jersey. So the girl that I'm with now, basically, she's from New Jersey. So what ended up happening was, me and her father, we hit it off. Me and her father very close to this day. And he's business minded, and I've always been business minded since I was young. So he was like, hey, man, why don't you do that boxing gym you've always said you wanted to do? Because I always said it along the process. One day I want to open up a boxing gym. And when I came home, I was kind of lost. And he was like, why don't you do that boxing gym? I got a space for you to check out here in New Jersey. Fly up here, come look at it. So I flew to New Jersey. And this is the quick story. There's a lot of stuff that happened in between, but I'm not going to take up time talking about that. But we flew to New Jersey, and I looked at the space and I said, let's do it. So me and him opened up a gym together as business partners. And my goal wasn't to be a coach. My goal was to be a gym owner, hire a coach, and make a ton of money. That was the mentality. I'm like, I'm just going to get rich with this boxing thing. And little did I know how the business was. I didn't know that it was such a hard business to make a lot of money in, for one. And for two, little did I know that I was going to end up being the coach, because it was hard for me to just put anybody in that position. And then what ended up happening was I fell in love with coaching. And everything shifted for me at that moment. Once I started teaching guys and seeing guys develop in the beginning, I was just like, I like this. You know what? I'm going to be the coach. And then that's what happened.
Yeah, it's really interesting to say that, because I run a gym as well, and I'm also a coach. And I hear what you say about giving that responsibility to someone else. It's got to be someone you've trained, hasn't, to become a coach, or someone's been around before you start giving them that responsibility, because you are the face of that club. You are the face of that brand. So yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, at first? But yeah, I mean, I can kind of see now how you've grown the brand, because you were always business minded. So I'm sure as the interview goes on, I'll ask more questions about that as well. So who were your teachers and your mentors, which sort of you've taken from that to become the coach you are?
Man, I gotta say, man, it's been a lot like mixed into a pot. So, you know, I got my own personal experiences. In the beginning, like I told you before, I used to just watch all the top guys train and just, I'm like, I learned a lot from watching fighters.
Mm.
Then what ended up happening was I had a trainer when I was competing. His name was Johnny Bump City Bumpus. He was a former world
Oh,
champion in
yes, yes.
1982. Yeah, he also trained Kasim Uma at the time. And Kasim Uma was from my home gym. So I had an opportunity to work with him. But and I also competed through the Boca Raton PAL, which at that time in Florida was like the one of the better amateur boxing programs. But what was happening was I was just going through motions and just learning, like doing. I mean, they obviously teach you the jab, the cross, the hook, but they never gave me the full understanding of what I was doing. And it wasn't until I stopped boxing completely, and I ended up going back to the gym, the Spartan gym that I was telling you about. But at this time, the owner who owned it, his name is Dave Luter. He was actually the understudy of Steve Shepard, and he owned the gym. He only had a couple of pros, but I knew there was an opportunity with him because he he was a fantastic teacher. He really knew the game. So I told him, I said, "Yo, I want to learn." And at this point, I'm already 26, 27 years old. And he's like, "Listen, I'll train you, but not for free. I ain't doing that free shit no more." And I was already making money. So at this point, I was like, "I ain't got no problem paying you." So I was paying him and he was training me. And then he was like, he completely made me feel like I was learning boxing all over again. So he really is the one who showed me the shoulder roll and explained to me the system of it and where you go, why you do what you're doing, and all these things. And then when I moved to Florida, we were already so close that I had him in my phone. And I would literally call him and ask him, like, "Hey, so what do you think about this?" Or I would send him an Instagram video. "What do you think about that?" And he would answer the questions in such an eloquent way that I was like, man, this guy. So I was just learning. And then he's a big portion of my development. So big shout out to Dave Luter, Dangerous Dave Luter. He's in the Florida Hall of Fame. Um, Fantastic teacher. I learned so much from him. He gave me the good stuff, I would say, because I already knew what I was doing, but he put it all together for me. And then, of course, when I moved to New Jersey, South Jersey, we're right outside Philadelphia. So, you know, I built relationships, you know, with guys in the Philadelphia area. I've been part of a lot of camps and I've learned I've worked with so many different coaches alongside fighters that, you know, you pick up a little bit from everything, a little bit from everybody. And what at this point of my journey, I know what makes sense and I know what doesn't. So if I see something I like, I'll take it. If I see something I don't like, I'll leave it alone because I already know the foundation. I got the fundamentals. So at this point, putting it together for my system is easier because I've already laid down a good foundation to my system on how I like to teach.
We have interest. So you've got a sort of mix and a blend, which sort of leads me nicely to my next question about how would you describe your coaching style. You're most known for your Philly shell videos.
Yeah.
Would you describe your style as more Philly shell? And you mentioned being in Philadelphia, obviously you've worked with Tevin Farmer as well. So how would you describe your coach style? And you've got that Puerto Rican background as well. So what's the end result? How would you describe your coaching and your boxing style?
Oh, and for the record, I don't want to leave out endless conversations with Billy Briscoe, who obviously I saw in your recent interview. Yeah. Big shout out to Billy Briscoe. He's like I guess I could put him in a mentor position as well, but we have great conversations and he's always been fully transparent on his ideology. And, you know, like I said, I learn from everybody, but I want to make sure that I don't forget to shout out Billy because he mentioned my name in the most recent interview.
Billy.
And I got to make sure I mention his because Billy to me is just one of the brightest boxing minds that I've ever met in my life.
It's so nice.
He's very similar to my guy that I explained to you, where you ask a question, they can give you the answer. And that's what I've always aspired to be throughout this whole journey. When somebody asks me a question, I want to have the answer. But back to what you were asking, my style of boxing to me is boxing. So I know I'm popular for the Philly shell, but I have no problem teaching a guy to keep his hands up. I got no problem teaching a guy to go get him. I'll give you an example. when I got with Raymond Ford, who's the current fighter that I'm working with now, he came off of 2 rough fights that people were questionable about his performances. And big shout out to his trainer, Coach Reg. He called me up and asked me personally, listen, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And I told him everything I saw wrong. And then he said, hey man, can you please help me with this kid? And at first I wasn't going to do it, but then I decided to do it. And when I got with him for the first camp, the goal was to stay off the ropes, right? And the goal was to get him back to utilizing a jab and teaching him upper body movement, or getting him to at least do what he already knows how to do, which is upper body movement. And I focused on that with him every time I worked with him. Had him slipping, had him developing his jab. Every time he got to the ropes, instead of him being square, I put him in an angle, and then I show him how to catch and drop so he can get out the ropes. And I would drill these specifics with him because this is what he needed. When we got the call that he was going to fight the most recent opponent he had, I took a look at his opponent alongside Coach Reg, and we decided that we're going to make Raymond go right at him, because we realized that this guy felt comfortable going forward only. And we also understood that if we could push a guy backwards that doesn't feel comfortable going backwards, we're going to have an advantage there. And we felt that we had the right fighter that can execute it. So Raymond went forward. The whole fight was very aggressive. So when somebody asks me, what is my boxing style? I simply say boxing, because there's not an area of boxing I don't cover when I coach people. It's just that the Philly shell grabs the attention of people on the internet, the same way the fancy mitt work grabs the attention of people on the internet. But what people have to realize is, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing, but behind closed doors, we're covering everything. You might see me do a fancy mitt work combination and assume that that's all I do. But you might see me teaching the shoulder row and assume that's all I do. And that's fine. The same way people assume that Floyd Mayweather only hit the wits like this or hit the bag like this, but then he goes out and has spectacular performances. I don't think he was having spectacular performances hitting the bag like this and hitting the mitts the way he does. That man made sure he left no stone unturned. So we do the same thing. It's just the internet and reality sometimes is a little bit misconstrued, I guess is the right way to say it. I probably said that word the wrong way, but the truth is you only see what I show you. And so that's what people know me for, but there's much deeper than just the Philly shell or the shoulder roll. Some people may argue that what I teach isn't the Philly shell, right? That that's the shoulder roll, that the Philly shell might add in some cross, and that's fine as well. It is deeper than just one thing, if that makes sense.
Mm. It also shows, going back to your business acumen, it shows good business acumen that at the time, Floyd Mayweather, his shoulder roll, they called it a Philly shell, but that became popular, and so did his mitts. And you had that in your armor, that you were able to do it. If you're known for it, for being the Philly shell number one for the Philly shell, it's because they saw how good your work was. So the timing was good there as well, and that you were able to show how good you were doing that. That a lot of us guys, including myself, were drawn to watch your videos, and we still follow you now. And again, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Billy Bisco. When you talk to him, he can just roll out, the facts and stories, and it was mesmerizing just listening to him talk.
He doesn't get enough credit here locally. If you ask me, he doesn't get enough credit here locally. A lot of the locals, I think they're, he's one of those guys that unfortunately, when he's not here anymore, people will boast and brag about him. But now people don't say a word. And that's why I make sure in the position that I'm in that, as I grow and elevate, that I make sure that I mention his name, and I make sure that I bring him on my channel, and I show people that, he is one of the people that I go to, one of my go-to guys, because, some people, they don't care for the fame. They don't care for the internet. And if you don't see it on the internet, it's not reality for most people. But the truth is, that man is a very intelligent, very bright man and deserves his flowers. So I'm gonna give them to him.
Definitely agree with you there. Okay, so when would you say you had your first big break in boxing? Who was it with, and how did it come about?
Well, my first big break, hands down, was Hammer and Hank Lundy. I had already been working with other local professionals and amateurs and my gym members, and I was posting a lot of stuff on the internet, and Hank Lundy liked me, and he reached out to me. And it's funny how you say, like in the beginning of this interview, how you said it's crazy how you're watching somebody and then now you're talking to them. Well, it was similar to Hank Lundy. I used to watch Hank Lundy on Friday Night Fights every time he fought, and I was like, this fucking guy is good. And then when I moved here, I actually went to a gym that used to be called 10 Rounds in Bristol, Pennsylvania, and Hank Lundy was training there. I walked in there to just work out for myself because at the time I was still working out with boxing, and Hank Lundy was in there. And I was like, oh shit, Hank Lundy. So then, you know, it was funny. I actually was sparring some guys there that day, and Hank Lundy liked me and came in my corner and started giving me instructions. The first time I met him, he was like telling me stuff to do. And then afterwards, you know, we took a picture, which I still have the picture somewhere over here. And then he seen that I was a coach, and he reached out. He said, "Yo, man, I like your coaching style. Would you be part of my team?" And I was like, "Would I? Hell yeah! Like, I'll do it for free." Like I was just like, man, this is my first. And you know, and it's crazy because I don't want to I'm going to fast forward slightly, but I remember when I first opened the gym, when people talk about the law of attraction. And I remember when I first opened up my gym and I got Hank Lundy in the gym. I mean, I started working with him. I remember saying, I want to work a world title corner and be on HBO one day. And then next thing you know, I'm working with Hank Lundy as he fights with Terrence Crawford on HBO. And I'm just like, it happened. But I wasn't specific enough. I didn't say that we wanted to win a world title. So I had to make sure in the future, I said, not only do I want to be in the world title corner, I want to be with a world champion. And then that'll fast forward to, you know, obviously Tevin Farmer. But, you know, it's like everything I've ever wanted to accomplish as a coach actually happened in one way or another. And I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know Hank Lundy was going to lead me to the other fighters that I got at that moment in time, you know?
Yeah, it's for me as well. It's fascinating. I followed yourself before I was Instagram, the Bread Man, Billy Briscoe, so I knew about him. And then, yeah, now I've interviewed all three of you guys. But it shows you going on the right track, doesn't it? These things happen. It shows what you're doing. You're doing the right thing. You're going in the right direction.
Everything leads you to the next thing. So, for instance, I work with Hank Lundy. Next thing you know, I'm working with Outlaw Eric Hunter, and we fought Lee Selby. Again, another world title fight that we didn't win. I wasn't specific enough. I didn't say we got to win the title. I just said I wanted to be part of a world. I was thinking too small. And then I ended up going to Florida. Now, check this out. I go to Florida, and I said to myself, I'm just going to market all the things I did in Florida when I lived here. So I was going to all my old gyms and taking videos and posting it on Instagram, right? It was just a marketing campaign on my behalf. There was no reason for me to do this, but I was actually going to see my mother. She lives in Florida. But I said, while I'm here, I'm going to stop at all the gyms and I'm going to take videos and talk. So then a UFC fighter reached out to me. He was a low-level UFC fighter by the name of Brian Houston. He actually DM'd me and said, "Hey, coach, I see you in Florida. Can you come down and work with me?" I was like, "Where you at?" He said, "American Top Team." I said, "Okay." I went. Didn't charge him, didn't ask him for money, anything. But when I went, I came with a videographer. So now I'm holding mitts for him, and I got my videographer with me, right? King Mo is looking from the background. So now King Mo comes up to me and goes, "Yo, who are you?" I'm like, "My name is Anthony." He's like, "Yo, man, I like your work, man. Where you from?" I'm like, "I live in New Jersey." You know what I'm saying? I was like, I was like, he said, "Who you work with?" I said, "Hank Lundy." He said, "Hank Lundy? That's my favorite fighter." So now I get a phone call, we exchange numbers. I get a phone call like 3 weeks later. "Hey, man, will you be part of my team?" And I was like, "Well, don't you work with Jeff Mayweather for your boxing?" Because Jeff Mayweather was his boxing coach. And he said, "Yeah, Jeff's my coach, but I just, you know what I'm saying, I want another look." I said, "Well, I can't do it unless you speak to Jeff and Jeff calls me." I said, "Because I don't want to step on anybody's toes." And he was like, "No, it's going to be good. Don't worry about it." I said, "I'm sorry." He calls Jeff Mayweather. Jeff Mayweather calls me up and goes, "You're the first coach in all the years I've been doing this that's ever done that. And I just wanted to call you personally to give you my respect." He said, "I would love to work side by side with you and King Mo." So then I built my relationship with Jeff Mayweather. You see what I'm saying? So to make a long story short, it's like everything led to the next thing. You know what I mean? And then next thing you know, now I got a relationship with the Mayweather family. I got a relationship with the people at American Top Team. I work with Hank Lundy. Boom. Everybody's watching on the internet, even if they're not talking about it. Next thing you know, Tevin Farmer reaches out to me and he wants to work with me. And now I'm working with Tevin right before he fights for a world title. And then we win the world title against Billy Dibb. And now, you know, the next thing leads to Raymond Ford. You know what I'm saying? Every step leads to the next step, even when you don't know it. It just happens that way. As long as you're doing it with integrity and you're being honest and you're not burning people and you're doing the best job, I think that's how you get rewarded.
Yeah. So how quickly did this happen? And was there a sense of being overwhelmed, or was it excitement? I mean, if it happened quickly, I mean, you must be thinking, what's going on here? Everything I'm thinking of, visualize is coming true. I mean, what was your feeling when this was all happening so quickly?
To me, it wasn't. To me, it was happening slow. In the moment, it's like, hurry the hell up, man. Get me to the next guy. Like, I didn't feel like it was quick. I felt like it was slow. It was a 10-year grind. I mean, you know, it just feels quick when you look back at it. It's kind of like weight loss, right? Like if I want a guy to lose 30 pounds and I tell him it's going to take him 6 months, in month one, you're like, 6 months? What the hell? But then if you don't start and then a year later, you're like, I would have just started, I would have been in shape by now. What was I thinking? So it's like 6 months or 10 years sounds like a long time until the 10 years runs out. And then you look back and you're like, oh shit, that wasn't that long. And I'm still relatively young. I still have an opportunity to do a lot more. So I think patience is something that you learn in the journey, but I do believe that in the moment, you're not going to feel like it's slow. You know what I mean? I think it felt actually, I mean, fast. I feel like it felt slow, but now looking back at it, I'm like, damn, it wasn't that bad. It was actually relatively quick.
But I mean, when you're starting out, these things always take a number of years. And then there's that sort of snowball effect. Was that the same yourself? So the first few 4 or 5 years may have been slow going, all of a sudden everything started one thing after another, that snowball effect. What was the time frame between training Hank Lundy and Tevin Farmer?
2 years. 2 years. I was working with Hank Lundy in 2015, and I think I got with Tevin in 2017. So about 2 years. I was working with Hank Lundy and Eric Hunter at the same time, and they weren't friends. So I would have to train them separately. They didn't like each other. But I was working with Hank Lundy, Eric Hunter, and King Mo all at the same time. So that time of my life is a little exciting because I was flying out to Florida to work with King Mo, and then I would come back, work with Hank Lundy. He fought Terrence Crawford shortly after that. We went to the UK to fight Lee Selby. And, so at that time of my life, I was moving around and doing a whole lot, traveling. I was going to Ireland. I've been to Japan, all these different places with King Mo. And then I went to the UK with Outlaw. And then I was going to California and different places with Hank Lundy. So at that moment, and I owned a gym and I had a bunch of amateurs and I had a bunch of members. So at that moment, and then looking back at it now, it's like, damn, I was doing a lot, but I felt like I needed to do more. I felt like there was room for more. Like the motivation I had for success is I'm not doing enough. So I always felt like I needed to do more.
Yeah, fascinating. So you work with Tevin Farmer. So I believe when I started following you, you were working with Tevin Farmer. So tell us how that happened, and then tell us more about that sort of relationship.
Well, me and Tevin were always friends through the boxing world. We were always friends, and we were friends on social media, and I would repost his stuff even before I met him personally, and he would post my stuff. We had like a social media friendship. And then one day I went to the gym for one of my young kids to spar another kid, but Tevin happened to be at this gym. So when I saw him, I finally walked up to him like, yo, what's up, bro? Blah, blah, blah. He like, yo, Coach Ant, what's up with some of that mitt work? And I was like, man, any time for you, champ. So then he was like, well, come on. So we did a video right there in the spot. Little mitt work video, nothing serious. And right after that, I get the call like, hey, Tevin's fighting Kenichi Ogawa for the title. We would like to know if you would like to come in and assist us with the coaching. And I was like, of course. He was like, well, how much do you want to get paid? I said, man, I'll do it for free. And they were like, no. We don't do nothing for free over here. And I was just like, okay, well, whatever you feel you can afford or whatever. Like, I always knew that I had to pay my dues. So I was okay. And at this point, I didn't build the confidence that I feel I have now to say, this is my price, right? At that time, I felt that I had more to prove. And I believe that you go through different stages of your career. And at that stage, I was still, in my opinion, the proven stages, proving that I knew what I was doing, proving that I brought value. I didn't want anybody to keep me around that didn't want me around. So I think they liked that about me, that I came in with that energy. And that's all she wrote. And Tevin Farmer was a pleasure to help. He was super fun. I probably had the most fun working with Tevin overall. I mean, we grew a real close friendship over the years. And Tevin's my brother, and that's how that happened.
Good stuff. Okay, so let's move on to building a fighter. So I mean, everyone has the same sort of, well, I think fundamentals always come first. We're always teaching from the ground up. But can you sense when a fighter has that something special?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know it. I mean, you're a coach, you know it. I mean, as soon as you see a kid, you're like, yeah, I could do something with him. And then there's others that you're like, this is going to be a project. I don't know. Like, I think the thing that coaches have to remember, and I think that some coaches may have an issue with, is we think we can save everybody. We think our methods are good enough to save the world. There's just some guys that just don't got it. And we have to be okay with that as coaches. All we could do is to try to get them to be better than what they were yesterday. But some guys just will never be, just like me, I'll never be a brain surgeon. I'll never be the president of the United States. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm okay with that. I accept that. Like, some guys will never be professional prize fighters, and they have to be okay with that. But there's nothing wrong with going through the process, learning, trying to improve, trying to be better than you were yesterday. But there's just some guys that the moment they put on a pair of gloves, you already know this guy, he's the one. I got to put energy into him for sure.
Yeah. So what are the three traits which every boxer, so you've been around so many good boxers, what are the sort of three traits, common traits you see in boxers who are successful, they need to be successful?
Self-sufficient. They have to be self-sufficient. I think that a lot of boxers, they rely on their coaches. They want their coaches to watch them shadow box. They want their coaches to watch them hit the heavy bag. They want their coaches to hold mitts for them 5 days a week. They want their coaches to wake them up in the morning to go run. They want their coaches to create a meal plan and keep them on track and motivate them. It's not how life works, man. We all got problems. We all got issues. If you want to be a successful boxer, you have to wake yourself up in the morning. You got to go ahead and do your freaking work, your road work. You have to be able to shadow box sometimes on your own. I'm not saying that a coach doesn't have a responsibility, because we do, but we shouldn't have to babysit you. If I have a gym full of 4 fighters, and I'm holding mitts for a fighter who's getting ready for a fight on December 19th, and you don't have a fight, you should be able to hit that heavy bag on your own without saying, well, how about me? It's the fighter who's got the fight coming up that's the priority at this moment. If you can't be a team player in those situations, another problem. So I think that fighters have to be self-sufficient enough to know what they have to do, whether the coach is there or not. That's number one. Number two, discipline. If a fighter's not disciplined, if a fighter gets sidetracked easily when the training is not happening, it's going to be a problem. There's 24 hours in the day. If you are with me for 2 hours and the other 22 hours, I got to freaking have a camera following you around because you're going to overeat, you're going to drink alcohol, you're going to do the wrong things, you're going to hang out with the wrong people, you're going to get in trouble, then what's the purpose of the 2 hours? There's more hours you're not with me than with me. So you have to be disciplined as a fighter, you know what I'm saying, if you want to be successful. And then the last one I would say is you have to be a student. As soon as you start getting good, as soon as you start to improve, you can't think that you know it all, because there's always more to learn. And I think that a lot of fighters, once they reach a certain level of success, at this point, they feel that they did it by themselves. And then they think that they don't have to listen. They don't have to follow instructions. The same rules don't apply to them that applies to the beginners. And that's not the case. You know, it's the hungry fighters who stay the course that are continuously succeeding more and more and more. You know, guys like Floyd Mayweather, you would see him go to the club and then go run 8 miles after. You get a guy over here, he wins a local title that's not even a world title, and he's partying, popping bottles and drinking alcohol and acting like he just made $1 million. And then when he loses his next fight, it's like, dude, you thought you made it before you did. You know what I'm saying? So that would be my 3.
So you mentioned about the fighters being self-sufficient, and you also mentioned about having a couple of fighters who didn't get on with each other. So then how do you manage that? So you've got a group of high-level boxers, and you've got to train them all. How are you managing all that? Getting them all under one roof, or making sure they're all firing all cylinders? How do you manage training high-level boxers and spreading your time amongst them?
I mean, there has to be an understanding from the very beginning of how this is going to work. What I learned over the years is if you're a coach and you don't take control, you're going to get stepped on. So I think a mistake that I made in the early stages of my boxing journey as a coach was giving the fighters too much of a benefit of the doubt. So for instance, if I got a fighter with some experience, I gave him the benefit of the doubt that he was going to know something, that he was going to understand something, not knowing that a lot of these guys fight off of reflexes. They don't even know what they're doing. So now I treat a professional the same way I treat an amateur. I let them know what my rules are. Listen, if you break, I'm cool. Like at this point in my life, I no longer need a fighter for any kind of, well, I never did, but I definitely don't need a fighter for reputation. I don't need a fighter for resume. I don't need a fighter for financial. So if a fighter comes to me at this stage of my career and they want to work with me because they believe in me as a coach, well, this is how I do things. And the moment that I see that you're falling off track, you can't work with a group of guys, because I have a group of guys. If I do, sometimes I'm only working with one guy. Like right now, I only work with Raymond Ford. But if I do happen to pick up 3-4 other guys and I decide that I want to have a system where I got a few fighters, this is the rules. This is how I operate. If you're not okay with that, there's 100 other coaches you can go to. And I think once they understand that you're serious and they understand that you're good at what you do and you're a legitimate trainer with good interest, I think they're going to be fine with it. You know what I mean? But it just takes a level of understanding before you sign the contract. It's like if me and you did a business deal together, if we lay everything out on the table, you can't complain and I can't complain 3 months from now. We already laid everything out. We agreed. We shook hands. Nothing to talk about now. We can't change our minds 3 months later and say, well, didn't we talk about it? Didn't we agree? What's the problem? And I think that's what you got to do with fighters.
Yeah. So your coaches worked with world champions. You're obviously a great boxing coach. So what about the coaches who are up and coming, who are in that position where they don't need a fighter? They may need a fighter to stick around. What's your advice to the up and coming coaches, the ones who, most coaches are not going to have world champion fighters, just law of averages, isn't it? Most coaches will not be working with world champions. So what's your advice to those coaches or up and coming coaches, how they set those ground rules? Because you mentioned about not needing a fighter. A lot of these coaches, they will need these fighters. What's your advice to these?
I mean, listen, the only advice I can give a up and coming coach is maybe, proving yourself as a coach before you start to make demands. But what I will say is this: as soon as you're compromising your own personal integrity for a fighter, you're already going down the wrong path. So if I was you, I would learn from my mistakes and take control of that as soon as possible. If I had a chance, I would go back and control those things. I might be even further at this point. There was a long time where a lot of fighters looked at me as just a guy good on the mitts, right? They didn't know that I actually had the knowledge to work the corners, that I had the knowledge to conduct a professional camp. And of course, I learned and improved over the years that it gave me this confidence. But I just think that I was overlooked for many years of the level of coach that I have the potential to be. And I believe that had I taken control sooner, you might be seeing me in even bigger situations. So I might have been moving a little slower pace because of me allowing certain fighters to step on me and overlook me and do things their way. So I think if I was a beginner coach back, I would take control of the situation sooner. But I do understand that opportunities, sometimes you have to bend a little bit for opportunities, and that's fine. Do what you got to do. I'm the first person to say, build your brand, market yourself, do your thing. Don't let nobody tell you different. But without the cost of your own personal integrity, don't give up your integrity for a fighter, because there's plenty of fighters, and you'll always get another guy who wants to learn from you.
You mentioned the mitts there. There's a kind of like a love-hate relationship in boxing with mitts, because some people will say you don't need much mitts. Others will say it's a great tool. Others will say then it's a great tool when used for particular things, such as drilling in specific combinations or counter punches, defensive moves. And you mentioned that you may be overlooked at the beginning because of your skills. But mitts, in my experience, building a boxing club, mitt work is where actually the money is as well. So it's not a bad thing. But what is your take on the mitts?
I think when the mitts are used correctly, they're one of the best teaching tools a coach can actually use. I just think that what's happening is with social media and fancy mitt work, that's where people end up going, and then people with very little knowledge of what they're doing learn mitt work without learning the craft. So they end up doing all this mitt work, not really understanding what they're doing. They just want it to look good. I believe if you use the mitts the way they're intended to be used, they can be arguably the best teaching tool in a boxing gym. Now, does that mean that a fighter does that mean a fighter needs mitt work? Absolutely not. I mean, when I was boxing, I didn't get that much mitt work, and I learned how to box pretty well. I got good technique, I got good form, I understand footwork, I could spar. So no, you don't need mitt work if you have a teacher who knows how to teach. But I do believe that mitt work can be very beneficial if used the right way. So that's the big if used the right way. Because when I got a guy in front of me with the mitts, I can physically grab him and put him in the right position and get him to throw the punch properly and fix his form. I could do this on the heavy bag as well. I could do a shadow boxing as well. But when you got a guy in front of you with the mitts, sometimes that little extra motivation gets them to really attempt and work harder. So I do believe that the mitts have a role. The problem is when you only do the mitts, you ignore the other areas of your training. You base your whole training routine around mitt work, forgetting that other things need to be done. So it's just like the speed bag. Who fights like this? Right? We can say arguably that the speed bag is the most unbeneficial tool in the boxing gym. And it probably is, in my opinion. But do I have guys hit it? Yes, we hit the speed bag. Do we need it? No. I've been in boxing gyms that had no speed bag and produced world champions. So, everything we do in boxing can be argued that it's not realistic to fighting, but we do it for different reasons. You know what I mean? And I just believe that the mitts is getting a bad rap, but only getting a bad rap because of the misuse of the mitts. But if you go back and look at Emmanuel Stewart, he held mitts. Freddie Roach, he held mitts. He holds mitts still to this day. And it's arguably one of the best living legend coaches that we have still currently active. You know what I mean? So Robert Garcia holds mitts. I mean, everybody holds mitts. So for anybody to really downgrade mitts, it's like you're just looking for something to pick at. But at the same time, mitts are overused 100%. Overused and improperly used. Overused and improperly used, but they are still a fantastic teaching tool.
Yeah, very versatile. I mean, my gym has a speed ball. It's broken, and I didn't bother fixing it. I mean, I find it's not really a speed ball, but it's more for the shoulders, isn't it? Keeping your hands up. Those shoulders get a good workout. Okay, so 3 traits coaches need to succeed. Also, top 3 traits for a coach.
3 traits?
Yeah, top 3 traits a boxing coach needs to succeed.
Well, in order to succeed, stay true to the game, stay true to the sport, don't follow the trends, really learn the game, learn the fundamentals, if you've never fought before as a coach and you want to be a coach, learn from a coach that either has been coaching for many, many years or learn how to do the stuff yourself and maybe put yourself through some of it just so you can know what the fighter's going through. But at the end of the day, you have to learn the skill set first, and you have to get good at the skill set. So be patient and learn the game. And if you want to be successful in this long term, right, you have to get good at this. You have to really, because you're going to get tested. The people are going to test you as you might sneak behind and get to a certain point. But imagine if I was on this interview with you today and I was a fraud, you would be able to pick me apart easily and be like, oh, this is the guy you guys follow, the mitt work guy. This guy's a freaking fraud, man. Let's pick him apart. Let's tear him down. And if I didn't continuously work on my craft throughout the last 2 decades and get better and better and better, I probably wouldn't even be speaking to you right now. So you have to really learn the skills and try to get better at them, because there's always more to learn. There's a lot that I have to learn. There's a lot that I'm going to be learning until I'm done doing this. So be a complete student, and really learn the game. The second thing that I would say to be successful is, man, that's a good one. When you say successful, what do you mean? Let me just
So I'm speaking here as a pro boxing coach, because you could be a successful coach running a boxing club, as a fitness sort of in the industry side of things, but as a successful pro boxing coach.
Okay, so the first one is learn your craft before you decide to be a pro boxing coach, right? So you don't want to be teaching something that you don't fully understand. So once you got that down and you feel confident, you understand the game, boom. The next thing to be successful is, really teach your fighters, really focus on teaching. Don't be a yes man. Don't be a guy who just does things because you're working with a pro and you want that pro. You want to keep your job and no, really educate and teach. Show your value. Show that those 10 years that you put in to learn what you know is now being implemented in the training. The fighters will feel it. The people around you will feel it. And you're teaching with integrity. And that's what's going to give you long-term success. You might be a guy to sneak in the back door and you might make a couple dollars not knowing it and doing whatever, but eventually you'll get called out and then that'll be the end of it. You know what I'm saying? So if you're in this for the long term, you have to really come in with true intentions, because professional boxing, and amateur boxing for that matter, the fighter's life is in your hands. And if you're not doing the best due diligence to make sure that fighter is fully prepared, you're the one who got to sleep at night. And like my buddy Billy Briscoe always says, boxing's a hard way to make an easy buck. So I'm not going to sit here and choose boxing to make money, financial gain at the expense of the athlete that I'm working with. My goal is for that athlete to be the best he could possibly be and as safe as he could possibly be under my supervision and guidance. And then the third thing I would say is be patient. Nothing happens overnight. So just because you've been doing all the first two things I've been saying, and maybe it's been 3, 4, 5 years and you feel like you haven't made your break, listen, man, I wouldn't do this unless I really loved it. So when you love something, 10 years can go by and you'll still do it every day the same way you did it day one. So if you love this, don't count days, don't count years, just keep on staying true to your craft, keep on getting better, keep on doing the right thing. And next thing you know, you'll get the phone call, hopefully, you know what I mean? And if not, at bare minimum, you were doing something you love for 10 years straight. And how many people can say that they get a chance to do that in this life? So for me, those would be the top 3 things.
Excellent stuff. Okay, so what about 3 things you dislike with boxing, and how would you like to prove them? You don't have to say 3, but 1 or 2 things which you don't like with boxing, how you want to improve them.
I hate the fact that if a fighter takes a loss, he's already looked and frowned upon as a guy who's not worthy to compete at the highest level. I hate that because, for one, back in the day, the best fought the best no matter what. And even with a couple of losses, it didn't even matter. I remember, I'm not like a boxing historian like yourself or like Billy Briscoe. I've seen you guys talk and you guys can go all the way back to like the freaking 1800s. I'm not really that guy, but I will tell you this, when I used to watch guys like Marco Antonio Barrera and Eric Morales and William McKennedy and Junior Jones, one of my favorite divisions of all times. Those guys all had losses and they would all fight each other. And, I remember when William McKennedy beat Junior Jones and everybody thought he was going to lose. And he had like 3 losses at that point. And Junior Jones actually lost on his birthday. And he actually was like the favorite to win. So, and then you had guys like Morales beating Jones, but then Jones beating Barrera, but then Barrera beating Morales. Like, it doesn't even really matter. Like, the best fought the best. And we didn't even care about the records. We just heard the names and we knew it was going to be a good fight. Nowadays, you get the loss, you're out of here. You never hear from him again. You know what I mean? And I think that's the number one issue with boxing, the way it's marketed. It's marketed as means everything unless you're selling a bunch of tickets or you're just like that super popular guy. And that's unfortunate. I also wish that the promotions would do their jobs and actually promote the fighters better, as opposed to forcing the fighters to promote themselves. You know, if you get a really talented fighter, but he can't sell tickets because he's not using social media and he's not doing the stuff, like example, a Ryan Garcia personality or a Jake Paul personality, now that fighter doesn't get opportunities no matter how good he is. And I think that's unfortunate. If I sign to a promotion, last I checked, the promotion's supposed to promote, like promote your athlete, like get his name out. He's a fighter. He's not a promoter. That's why he went with your team. Like, I don't get the concept of that. Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe that it helps a fighter to promote himself, and he should learn. And if he can't, you should bring on people who will help you in that area. But I feel like everybody has a job to do. You know, the fighter's job is to be prepared, focused, dedicated, and skillful. Your job is to promote my fighter. The manager's job is to make sure he's being moved properly. Everybody got a job. So I just think that the promotion should be doing a better job of promoting some of these fighters, because these fighters, you know, a lot of them, they're not marketing guys. That's why they're fighters. If they were marketing guys, they'd be marketing. And another thing that I don't like about the boxing game is the unfortunate judging. You know, a lot of guys win fights and then they end up taking a loss when you know damn well they won that fight, or you know damn well they didn't lose by that many points. And I just think that there needs to be something a lot more strict when it comes to the judging, because it's very unfortunate. And I don't know what's going on. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but what I tell you is you ain't got to be, you know, a rocket scientist to see there was some bullshit going on with that judging that you just did. So the judging is another thing I would fix. Those are my three.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sad, because when you're judging and you give a bad decision, you are messing with someone's livelihood. It can really set back someone from having a big title shot, for example, you know, missing out on millions. You know, if it was a title fight. Yeah, so that's really, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I know you mentioned the boxing history side of things. I feel like I need to pay homage to one of Puerto Rico's greatest ever fighters from a long time ago, Coco Kid, one of Black Murder's road fighters, who a lot of people don't really know about or speak about often. But he was, you know, he fought guys like, you know, Archie Moore, Charlie Burley, Holman Williams, these guys, and you know, he was
Yeah,
a great boxer.
I just learned that from you. You know what I'm saying? I just learned that from you. Like, I always, you know, I talk to people. I say, man, you know, it's a shame that I'm not a real boxing historian. You have a lot of coaches that they really know the history of the game, and that's an area that I never dive back, you know, that far back. And eventually, I'm gonna make time for that, to really learn guys that were way before my time. And that's an area that I would say I lack. I can't really have those conversations with everybody. I kind of, from where I started to now, is where my education is as far as the fighters go. But there's a whole list of guys before me that were great fighters.
Well, a lot of my guys who I train watching this, they probably not even aware that a lot of the things I teach them, I learned from you. so, so I know, I'm sure when they start watching your videos now, they'll say, "Yeah, hang on, Fayz taught us that. And he got it from Coach Anthony."
But you know what though? There's you know what? There's no shame in that, and the fact that
no, we all learn from someone.
Yeah, and the fact that you're humble enough to say that. A lot of guys will do that. I see it all the time. There's guys that will, you know, steal stuff from other coaches and not give their coach praise. They'll act like they made it up. Listen, I didn't make up the stuff I know. The stuff
we all learn from someone else.
I'm passing you down something I learned from other people. So everybody wants to sound smarter than they truly are. And it's like, listen, man, each one teach one. We're all learning. And the goal is to continue learning.
Yeah. But my coach, give a shout out to my coach, was Spencer Oliver, who was a former European champion. He would have been a world champion, I believe, but he suffered a brain injury in a fight when he was 23, when he was European champion. He's one of Sky Sports analysts. So he gave me my grounding, taught me a lot of good things. So yes, a shout out to him as well. But yeah, we all learn. We all learn from someone else. No one knows it all. And it's all been done before, hasn't it? You know? But yeah, you've definitely been a big influence on me. So big thank you to you there, and I'm sure my guys will be appreciate that as well. You know, learning from someone who's really good, though, aren't I? So all good there. And so skills you believe are being lost and not being taught enough anymore.
You know, that's a good one. If you talk to most trainers, they're gonna say, "Oh yeah, the game has declined significantly," and maybe, maybe not. I mean, look, I think Shakur Stevenson's a fantastic fighter that I think would do well in any era. You know what I mean? I think that Devin Haney's a fantastic fighter. I think that there's a lot of good fighters that are fighting today. Lomachenko, the Usyks of the world, the Tyson Furies of the world. Like these are all current guys that are super talented fighters and will do well in any era. So I don't know how much skills we're actually losing or we're being more efficient nowadays or whatnot, but I do believe that back then we had more fighters that were being developed. But I do believe that boxing was more popular also, and I believe that more people wanted to be boxers. Um, so I don't know really what's missing. I think there is some differences there. I do believe that back in the day, you might have seen a little bit more feinting and a little bit more combinations and a little bit more footwork than you see now. But some of these younger guys that are really successful, they don't overuse their footwork. They don't overuse their combinations. They kind of pick their shots, and maybe there's some efficiency improvements now. So what I'm gonna say is, back then there was more talent than there is now, but I do believe that there are still guys that are being taught properly now. There's really good
Yeah.
fighters today that can compete in the 90s, that can compete in the 80s. And who's teaching these guys, right? They're learning from somebody, obviously. So it's easy for us as older guys and older trainers to say, oh, these new guys ain't got it. But there's a lot of young, good guys. Like right now, the
Definitely.
135-pound division is one of the best divisions I think I've ever seen in history. You
Mm,
know, I mean, you
yeah.
got Shakur, Javante, you got Devin, you got Lomachenko, you got Ryan Garcia, you got Tiafoe. Like those, that's a good. In 10 years, we're gonna look back and say that was a hell of a clash right there. Those kids
Yeah.
can really fight. You know what I mean? So, you know, there's differences, and but of course you got the 80s, you got some 90s. I think every era had great fighters, and every era can say my era was better than your era, and we'll never know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, Terence Crawford is my favourite active fighter, and he's someone I think could have fought in any era. He's just well rounded in every area of boxing. He can do it, can't he? So yeah, he's
Yeah,
a great
I'm like,
boxer.
don't get me wrong, man. But I do believe that we're losing the teachers. We are losing the abundance of teachers. There's still good teachers out there, but how many? Like back then, you can probably go to Philadelphia and go into any boxing gym and get a great teacher. Now you might only be able to find two. So the good teachers are being less and less because, and the reason why I think good teachers are getting less and less is because people are saying, hey man, I got to make money. I mean, I can't just sit around training guys all day if I'm not making a living. Back then, guys didn't care as much as now. People are getting smarter. People are saying, forget that. I ain't got time for fighters, man. I'm going to open up this fitness boxing gym and I'm just going to run it as a business. And so these are the issues that boxing is having, that people are making other choices. Maybe there's a good teacher that just doesn't want to waste his time. So we just have less than we did before.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So you believe we've got less teachers now because people don't have the patience to learn the art as it should be. So we're
Exactly.
getting
I think we have. I think it's both ways. I think less. I think teachers are less excited to work with fighters. I think that, and there's also not like a lineage the way there was at one point. Like there was a
mm,
time where it's like you learned from your trainer and you passed it down to you. Like it was just. It's kind of like karate, right? Like karate used to be a big thing. Now it's like MMA, and like I just think that now, like, you can't find a karate school like you could back in the day. You know what I mean? Like, but it's like you still got a few guys out there teaching taekwondo and all that type of stuff, but not as much. Back then, you could see a karate school in every plaza. So I just think that
yeah,
you just have less, but there still is quality, just less quality. But you got guys spread out doing more things now. Back then, there was only boxing, karate, and like I don't know the regular sports. Now you got MMA, and a lot of we're losing athletes to different sports, and people are making wiser choices. You got the internet now. Guys are saying, "Man, forget fighting. I'm just gonna go online and figure something out." Or so you're just getting less of it. It's just. But I do think there's still really good talent. A lot. I see
mm,
kids now, man. Sometimes I'm on Instagram. I see 8-year-olds, man, doing professional moves. I'm like,
yeah,
somebody's teaching that kid.
yeah, yeah.
So you can't tell me that there's not good teachers out there, because there's an
Yeah.
8-year-old doing a professional move at the age of 8, 9 years old. Like, who taught him? It still exists. Boxing is still alive. It's just you have to search a little harder for it now.
Yeah, there's definitely lots of good coaches there and lots of good teachers. I'm sure we can name a number that we see on Instagram as well. But yeah, so it's really sad. You mentioned the lineage of these guys as well. Like Billy Briscoe was trained by Wesley Mouzon, who had worked with Jack Blackburn. Jack Blackburn trained Joe Lewis. Also interviewed Billy Paddon, who was trained by Willie Redder Senior, who trained St. Liston. So these are the sort of people that you want to be learning from, isn't it? So it's really sad if they're unable to pass their knowledge down. It'd be interesting to see how what way it goes if that's the case. We've got to have to find a way to keep that knowledge alive.
And this is kind of why I went on the internet with what I've done, because I remember when I was learning these skills, and I remember that I was learning how to box. I learned how to box the right way 10 years after I've been boxing, and I was already done competing. So I say to myself, damn, I'm learning how to fight box when I'm no longer boxing. Ain't this some bullshit? You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to pass on that knowledge to the world at scale. So how else can I use it? The internet, YouTube, Instagram, my online courses, stuff like that. And it's like, I was so excited to get this stuff out. Like, I try to talk to my girl about this stuff. She don't care. Like, yo, babe, you know, if you slip a jab, you slip a right hand, rip a hook to the body, they try to counter you with a hook. You could roll under the hook, step in, smother, or hit. Like, she's like, yeah, whatever, right? Like, she don't, who else am I going to talk to, right? So I could talk to a camera, I could put it all on the thing, and I can give it to the world, and people could take it for how they want, and then I could make an offer, and if they want to go ahead and learn more, they can purchase from me. It doesn't matter if they do or they don't, but the key is I'm getting it out. It's like my art form that I can put out to the world, and that's the beautiful thing about the internet. And I think the internet gets such a bad rap, but if you use it properly and use it the way it's supposed to be used, it's just like the mitts, right? The mitts are overused, but the mitts are a great tool if used properly. Same thing with this internet. If you use it the right way, this can be the greatest thing in the world, and it can connect us, and you can learn faster now than any point in history. Back in the day, if you didn't have Billy Briscoe's phone number, you wasn't talking to Billy Briscoe. Now you can talk to him, and he can give you an interview and give you $1 million worth of game in 1 hour. And now you can segment those into 10, 15 new videos, and now people can learn. And it's just like, thank you, Fayz, for getting that guy on there. That guy was a genius. The internet is a beautiful thing if used properly.
Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed a number of coaches now, and I've learned so much from each one. It's great for me as a pro coach as well. I'm based in the UK, so our style is quite different to the US style. But history shows that the US style has been the most successful. So for me, it's great. I'm picking up all these tips from the US, which I can now implement with my guys. So that was going to be my next question. You mentioned the social media. Most boxing coaches, let's be honest, we're not great in front of the camera. We haven't used social media, to the best of its ability. Some have. You're amazing at what you do on social media. So just describe this process, how you did all this. I know you mentioned you've got a passion for it, but a lot of coaches have passion for it, but they can't translate that passion onto the screen. I mean, how did you go through this process of building your social media brand?
It was easy for me because I personally liked Instagram when I first got on it. I enjoyed it. Then I ended up moving over to YouTube, and once I did it a few times, I enjoyed it. Once I got the comments and the people saying how much my stuff has helped them, and I've had guys tell me they won their fights with a video. I don't even believe them when they tell me. I'm like, this guy can't be telling me the truth, man. Like, this got to be just to be nice to me or something. But I've had guys send me emails saying, bro, I knocked the guy out with this shot and this, and this. And I'm just like really? Like, because I didn't learn on the internet. Like, I learned in real time. So, it was definitely something that every time I got positive feedback, it just motivated me to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. So the internet has always been a strong point for me because I never looked at it as a complicated thing. And I always had the passion to teach people what I know. I remember when I was boxing at a younger age, I would teach guys what I learned before I fully understood it. So it was like I always liked teaching. I always like if I know something, I always want to give that tip away. Like, yo, man, you should try this because I know it worked for me, and maybe I went through the same process as you. You should try this, try that, even if it's not boxing related. So it's just something that I like to do, and the fact that I could do it in front of a camera and let as many people who get an opportunity to see it, man. For me, it was a no brainer.
So do you do this all yourself, or have you got a team helping you produce all this content?
I have a team at this stage, but I definitely started off by myself, and
Yeah.
you can see the improvement of my content as far as editing goes and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely have a team, and it's not a big team. I got a couple of people, selected people that help me with certain areas, but you know, it's definitely a business for me now. When I'm on the internet now, it's no longer what it used to be. It used to be, I just go on Instagram and like photos and post anything. Now it's like, I'm a little more careful about what I post. I try to keep everything boxing related. I mean, there's times I might just show you a little regular life stuff, but for the most part, it's mainly boxing, and I treat it like a business. I make sure everything that I post is leading to what I'm doing right now. I've been posting, my Black Friday sale like crazy. Like I treat it just like it's a store that, you want to learn boxing, you want to be educated, you don't have access to the mentors. Let me be that mentor. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to do it in a way where it doesn't seem like cartoonish or, it's like it's real. You're gonna get the real stuff from me and you have access to me. And I know a lot of people don't have that they don't have that. So that's what I want to do for the community.
I have to commend you not just on your work, but also those sound effects you're able to produce on the pads.
It just comes out, man. You come out like whoop, 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 like that. Yeah,
well, he got me hooked 5 years ago.
Yeah, I don't even know. Sometimes I don't even know when I do it. People used to always crack jokes. I'm like, man, it just happens, man. I don't know. It's like it keeps me going.
Well, it also helps make you unique, doesn't it? I mean, you got to, it helps all part of the character and the charisma, doesn't it? Because you can see it's genuine, can't you? So we're in a social media age where not just coaches but fighters have to properly use social media. I also interviewed Minicon, who's one of the Misfits boxers, and he's a social media influencer, an influencer boxer. He gave his advice on how to build a brand. You're a great coach in the business who succeeded on both ends, business side and in the ring, outside the ring. So what's your advice to fighters and coaches there on approaching building their own brand, using social media for that?
Use social media to build your brand. Don't use social media to talk about the negatives or to curse people out. I see a lot of fighters and stuff, they'll use social media as their outlet for their own personal, inner thoughts, and don't use it for that. Social media is for people to, just track your career, record yourself hitting the bag, record yourself hitting the speed bag, show people your journey. Don't worry about always trying to look like you're a huge success. Show some of your failures, show something, but keep it boxing. Keep it boxing. Keep your private life private and use social media to promote what you're trying to get people to follow you for, and that's your boxing career. And I just think that that's the problem. People use social media and they take it too personal, and they get mad, and they take out their anger on social, or if somebody didn't like their photos, now they feel like, oh, he's acting funny. Man, we're not worried about none of that. Only thing we want to do is get our stuff out there and show people what we got going on, and the people who like it, come on along for the trip. The people who don't like it, that's fine. I don't want nobody negative with me. So if you're not feeling what I'm doing, I'd rather you leave now, so I know the people who are with me, we're going to go ahead and we're going to ride this ride till the wheels fall off. It's no different from what I'm doing. A fighter should be doing the same thing from a fighter's perspective. You don't got to teach tips and all that, but you could show people, this is what I'm doing. Did a few rounds today. Next day, you hit the mitts. Next day, you hit the bag. Next day, you show some jumping rope. Then you show your fight. You know what I mean? It's just show people the journey. Bring them in. Let them see a little bit of it. And it's really not that difficult. You just got to record little stuff and post it. And I think people overthink it. It's really not as complicated as it sounds.
Very good advice, and I agree with you. And yeah, I mean, getting into these online debates is just a waste of testosterone now. And at my age, I haven't got much left of that, so just ignore it. Like I said, cut off that negativity. and
We don't got
get on
time,
things.
man. We gotta stay on course, and all that stuff is gonna do is sidetrack you from the main objective. And listen, nobody likes you when you're on top, man. So you got to remember that too. So if you're a fighter and even if you're not on top, you might be on top of your circle, right? You might be 1-0, and I ain't made it yet, but to all these other people who are under you, you're still on top of that. So nobody likes you when you're growing. So well, the people who you don't want around you that don't like you, that's fine. You got to use that as a motivator to keep on pushing, because you can't make everybody happy. Somebody's always going to find something wrong with you. I had a guy one time comment on a video that I did, that I know personally, something he didn't like that I taught. And I said, let me ask you a question. I've been doing videos for the last decade. You've never once commented on the videos you like. But the one video I did that you didn't like, you found it in yourself to come and approach me and talk to me about what you didn't like. How come you never complimented me on anything? You only talked about the negative. Oh, I found something I didn't like. Let me attack them for it. So it's like, it just shows you, like, people are just waiting for you to fail. People are just waiting for you to make a mistake. You see what I'm saying? And then so you just have to understand that comes with the territory. That's just part of the game. And I think the fighters are so emotional that they allow that to tear them down. They got to be strong. It might be smart for some fighters to just give their social media to a social media manager and say, listen, man, I don't even want to look at this thing. Just run that for me. And that's it. And maybe they could just have like a little secret one that they have, like, it might benefit certain guys who can't handle the pressure of it,
Yeah, I might be wrong and saying who said it. I believe it was Malcolm X, but he said, if you have no critics, you'll likely have no success. No, very true. Okay, so what is I know you're a businessman as well, and you mentioned the law of attraction as well. So I've seen some of your posts talking about mindset. So I'm interested in this sort of aspect as well. You mentioned like words, for example, speaking good words. So what's your advice on these, on your mindset, your success tips? Because the mind is, it's a great thing, isn't it, when you can control it and you can focus it in one place. So what's your advice to people on the mindset you have to you've been achieving your goals, and you mentioned before how everything was coming to fruition. Tell me more about your mindset.
All the top mindset people will say the same thing. You are what you think about, and so the first thing is you want to do is you want to think about what you want. Don't think about what you're afraid of. Don't think about those things, because when you think about what you're afraid of and everything like that, a lot of the times it's not even a reality, and you're creating a reality that's not true. Don't think of the negative. Think of what you want, and then work toward it. As soon as you make a decision, work toward that decision. Example, I decided I wanted to open a gym. So what do? We took the steps properly to open a gym. Then I decided that I wanted to do a YouTube video. What do? I created the vision. I want to do a YouTube video. Okay, what do I got to do the YouTube video? I learned it. Next thing you know, I'm producing YouTube videos. Then I said I want to do courses. Next thing you know, I'm doing everything I've ever wanted to do. I've created. It started with a thought, and then it's about taking the steps and the actions to reach the goal. No matter how long the goal takes, if you really want it, you'll do it. So I think for mindset is only think about what the things that you want in life and work toward those things, right? You can't just think about it and it's going to fall in your lap. Is okay, I want to lose 30 pounds. Okay, you know what you want. What are we going to do to lose the 30? Well, I'm going to fix my diet. Okay, how are we going to fix the diet? Well, I'm going to go ahead on Sunday and buy a bunch of healthy food, and then I'm going to meal prep. Great, we got that. And then what are you going to do? Okay, we're going to go to the gym and exercise. Okay, how many days a week? 3. Boom, do it now, right? Like next thing you know, things start to get adjusted along the way, and the weight comes off. That's everything. So I just think that you have to have the mindset of what you want and be willing to do the work to go get it. And only think about what you need to be thinking about. Anything that gets into your brain, you gotta fight. Trust me, man. I know. I go through it too. You gotta fight to get that shit out of your head, because all it does is distract you from the goal.
Great advice. Great advice. Okay, so how about a day in the life with Coach Anthony? Because training fighters, you're doing social media, you're doing the No Days Off November as well at the moment. talk me through a day in the life of Coach Anthony.
Well, it just depends if I'm working with a fighter or not. So, like for instance, when I'm working with a fighter, you know, I already know what time that fighter wants to train, and I kind of schedule my day around that. So, like Raymond Ford, he would like to work out around 2 p.m. So, since he liked to work out around 2, I would get up in the morning. I probably work on some emails. You know, get back to people in the CA boxing community. I have a private community that for all the people who's purchased my stuff, and you know, I deal with them. You know, I help them with their goals. I might adjust some of their workout plans. You know, deal with them on a personal level. And then once I do that, I'll go to the gym, train the fighters that I work with. From there, I'll go and try to sneak in my own workout, get my own workout in, and then I'll come back home. And then from the nighttime on, I'm kind of a later person. I can stay up 12, 1, 2 in the morning. So from like 8 p.m. to 12, I'm either doing the No Days Off November, or I'm researching what I'm trying to do next, or I'm answering more people in my community, stuff like that, or I'm dealing with my team, telling them, okay, these are the videos I need edited for this and this and this, and this is what I want on the videos, and fix it up this way. And I'm dealing with them in that manner, you know. And then on certain days, I'll actually go to the gym and record videos, try to get as many done as I can. And that's basically all I do, man. It's a pretty nice situation at this moment in time. I'm blessed.
Do you have any days off?
I don't take days off, man. I believe I do something every day. Now, I'm not necessarily working myself like a slave every single day, but every day I'm doing something business related toward my stuff. There's really no time to rest because people email you at any time. Ideas come up, and I want to attack those ideas when I have them. So, you know, I got to always deal with my team, my assistants and stuff, to make sure that we repurpose old content and turn that into new content. So there's always something to do. So I'm always doing something, but I might work one day 3-4 hours on it, and then that's another thing. I'm not working like a set, like, you know, the 9 to 5 guy, right? Like I might get a bunch of stuff done from like 9 a.m. to 1, and then I might do something else that has nothing to do with my business, and then I might get an email out of nowhere, you know what I mean? So it's like my day is kind of like all over the place, but I'm always prepared to do what I got to do.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm running a boxing club myself as well, your mind never switches off. So yeah, I mean, yeah, for me, it's pretty much an everyday thing as well.
But you know how you got some guys that they're like wake up at 5 a.m. and you know like I've always liked the idea of doing that, but it never works for me that way. So at this point, I kind of just know, like, I'm just a guy that, you know, I just get it done when it happens. I adjust as I go. I try to have some sort of a schedule, but you never know what's life's gonna throw at you. So I'm always prepared to pivot when I have to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so some well, let's go to your plans for the future before I go on to any user questions. What's your plans and goals for the future?
My plans and goals for the future at this moment is to really focus on my online coaching. I really want to turn this into one of the best, if not the best, online boxing platforms available to people. I want to teach the sweet science the right way, to people who really want to learn it, whether that's coaches, whether that's fighters, you know, whether that's people who just want to learn the game. So my goal is to really create something that can help everybody. A guy like yourself who said you've been watching me and you've been learning as a coach. I want coaches to be able to say, man, I want to become a better coach. Let me go to Coach Anthony and work with him personally and work with his team personally and see how they can help me. I want to help a fighter who's maybe doesn't have access to a coach. He lives in the middle of America somewhere where there's no boxing gyms. I want them to know they can go to CoachAnthonyBoxing.com and grab a course, and maybe even take it a step further and deal with me personally, virtually. I want to be able to just expand on the online coaching 100%. And I also want to develop more fighters. I do want to have more world champions that I work with. Right now, Raymond Ford is on the verge of becoming a world champion. And I would love to help more fighters become world champions, but I have to be very careful with who and how many people I take on. So I have to make sure I'm picking the right fighters to work with, fighters that are dedicated. That doesn't mean the fighter has to be a top guy. I've said it many times before. I will work with a fighter with a 500 or even a losing record if I feel that I can really help them. The fighter has to show me something that I see that I'm like, okay, you're somebody who might have had some hardship. I could turn your career around. I have no problem with that, but it has to be the right guy. So I'm very careful in that department. I turn down more fighters than I accept at this point. But yeah, that's really it, man. I want to just continue to grow in this boxing world and open up opportunities for more people to learn boxing properly.
That's very interesting. I mean, I'm sure when we touched upon boxing doesn't have as many teachers as it used to. So is that something that you have already, a mentorship program for coaches, or something you have planned? So mentoring other coaches,
Yes,
passing those skills on.
yeah. So right now, for instance, right, I sell courses, and all my courses are touched on different topics that a coach may or a fighter may have to go through in their journey. But I've also opened up something called Coach Anthony 2.0, which allows you to work side by me for 16 weeks, where I can actually go ahead and help you personally based off your own personal situation. So, for instance, I got a father right now that his son's coach passed away, and the kid's only 14 years old, and the kid is extremely talented. Like, the kid's going to be something if he sticks with it. And his father said, I want to take over his coaching. So I'm working with his father side by side for 16 weeks. I'm helping him with his programming. I'm watching his videos of him training. I'm giving him my feedback. I'm sending them private videos. We're getting on monthly coaching calls just like this. And I'm helping develop his father so his father can understand how to guide his son better. So this is something that works for coaches. I'm also doing this with boxers who are beginners who don't know how to run through my program the right way. Maybe they're skipping steps, and I'm telling him, listen, you guys need to focus on this for now. And then I watch them progress. So right now it's kind of something for anybody who is interested in getting better as a boxer. I may niche it down to coaches only. I don't know. We're still in the beginning stages, but right now it's definitely a mentorship opportunity for you to work with me personally.
That's good. So you also mentioned about turning down fighters. How do you decide who you want to train?
I decide who I want to train based off what I know about the fighter already. So if I know a fighter, if I worked with a fighter in the past and maybe I didn't like their energy, or I know something about them that I'm not interested in dealing with, then I may turn them down. If I know a fighter who's hungry and he just happened to have some bad luck and some bad coaching, I may say, well, listen, I'll work with you. So it just depends on the fighter. It just depends on the vibe. Sometimes I don't know until I work with them. So it just depends when you catch me. If I'm too busy, I'm not going to take you on, even if I do like you, because um, I don't want to just take fighters on just to take them on. I only want to work with people that I can produce results with. So if I'm in a moment in my career where I'm like, listen, I would take you, but right now I got the online thing going, I got this going, I got that going, it would be an injustice for me to take on a fighter. I actually had to turn down a friend of mine who's a fighter. And I'm not going to say his name due to respect, but I had to turn him down because I had too much on my plate, and I didn't want to turn him down personally, but I had to. And it was the best move for him in reality, because I would have coached him at that moment in time, I probably wouldn't have gave him the best coaching because I had other things going on. So if I take on a fighter, I'm fully invested, I'm fully committed. So I have to know that I'm going to be that committed and fully invested to take you on.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so one of the user questions we got was from Norma Coach 10, and he asks, how do you make a game plan for a fight?
I mean, a game plan, you have to know who you're dealing with, for one. You have to know who you're fighting. You have to pay attention to what their habits are, and you have to attack their habits. Something that me and Billy Briscoe would talk about all the time. He said, don't go after a fighter's mistakes, go after their habits, because habits are harder to break. And I believe that to be true. Habits are harder to break. So you definitely want to see what a fighter's doing, and then you want to see if you can go ahead and take advantage of those weaknesses. But again, it always comes down to teaching your fighter how to deal with situations. It always comes down to teaching your fighters the proper fundamentals and skill sets, because as we all know, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So you can have a game plan, but the game plan isn't guaranteed to work. And there's no guarantees in boxing. You want to be able to adjust as the fight is happening. You want to be able to make decisions on the fly. So if you know how to deal with a guy who is aggressive, if you know how to deal with a guy who fights on the back foot, if you know how to deal with a counter puncher, it's much easier to get through those fights than if you have a guy that doesn't know how to even deal with those particular situations. So your goal as a trainer should be, how do you deal with a guy who is aggressive? How do you deal with a guy who likes to move a lot? How do you deal with a guy who's a counter puncher? And you should be teaching him those skills. And once they know those skills, then it's easier to tell your guy, listen, he's a counter puncher. You know what to do. Listen, he's coming forward. You know what to do. And then you don't have to give all these difficult instructions in the corner, because you've already done the hard work, which was teach your fighter the skills. And now I can keep my instructions simple in the corner and he knows what to do. You know what I mean? So your job as a trainer and a teacher is to teach him how to deal with anything that boxing may throw at him, and then just say, hey, we're gonna, for instance, Raymond Ford, we're gonna go forward this fight because he doesn't like going backwards. That was the game plan. That was it. Now, we didn't say you're gonna slip and do this at this moment. No, we just said go forward. We're gonna take it to him. You know what to do. We worked on it. Now, if there was a situation where we felt that Raymond was having trouble or got hurt, I might have adjusted in the fly and said, boxing. You know how to box. Boxing. I don't got to give you all these complicated instructions when you already know how to fight. But it's my job to make sure you know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you're fighting someone, you may see something and capitalize on it. But if that fighter then sees that you've seen that mistake, they stop making that mistake. You need to go on to the next plan. So as a fighter as well, you need to be able to need to be able to handle multiple situations, because it's not just you see one weakness, you hit him and it's over. It's very, very like that. It's one weakness, you see it, he's now adjusted, and you got to find something else to do. You got to move on to plan B, C, D, E, and F. It's a long drawn out process usually. It's not simple at all.
Yeah, they got to know what they're doing in that ring, and they got to be prepared for anything.
So how long before you fall into a style? I mean, I've heard people say you don't know your boxing style until you've had about 10, 20 fights. What's your opinion on how long it takes for you to sort of fall into a style?
You mean for a fighter before he falls
for
into?
For a fighter, yeah.
I don't know, man. That's a good question. I'm gonna say every fighter is different. I believe that some fighters develop quicker than others, and it also depends on who's schooling them. You might have a guy, example, myself. I remember when I was training in the beginning and I was learning how to box, nobody taught me how to shoulder roll. Nobody taught me how to bend at the waist. Nobody taught me a lot of these things. People just told me, keep your hands up. And so I was boxing in a traditional way that I was taught, not knowing that there was more to learn and that I would actually be good at some of these other things that that were being taught to me. Now, as I learned how to shoulder roll, learn how to do certain things, I started to apply it in sparring. I never got a chance to show it as a fighter in fights, but I did it in sparring against good fighters. And I was like, damn, I wish I would have knew this stuff sooner. So I just think that it all depends on who's teaching you. It all depends on your learning curve. There's a lot of variables that go into that. I can't just necessarily say a fighter will know after 10, 20 times. Is who has he been working with for the last 10, 20 fights? What is he learning? What is he developing? So it's just so much that goes into that. But then it gets to a point where if you don't fix the thing soon enough, then it's like kind of a lost cause. It's too late. But yeah, I think every situation is different, man. Some guys will pick it up quick. Some guys will pick it up slow. Some guys have the opportunity to work with really good trainers that know how to teach them, and other guys just get whatever trainer that they can get. And unfortunately, they get limited. So it's a complex question. It's hard for me to just give you one easy answer.
Yeah, I mean, I always warn guys about trying to fight like their favorite fighter, because, for example, my favorite fighter is Muhammad Ali. But if I fought like Muhammad Ali, I'd probably be gassed in about a minute and be knocked out. So you can't always fight like your favorite fighter as well. A lot of guys now are trying to do the shoulder roll simply because of they've seen Floyd Mayweather fight. So it's like I said,
it's very easy to want to copy your favorite fighter, man. It's very easy to, and that's something that listen, if you have the ability, by all means, take what you can. But you have to also be a little bit honest with yourself. When you're trying this stuff, are you getting hit? Like if you're getting hit over and over again, then maybe this ain't for you. So you just have to kind of like know more or less yourself and be and honest with yourself. If you're a fighter trying to mimic other fighters, you have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So my next question is about the Philly shell, because a lot of the Philly shell shoulder roll is also down to reflexes. So in the same way I asked about how long it take for a fighter to fall into a style, how long will someone give the Philly shell before they know it's for them or it's not for them? Because you may just have, not have great reflexes for a system which requires you to have good reflexes. So how long would you give the Philly shell? I'm sure I've heard stories. It may have actually been James Toney. I'm not sure that at the start they struggled with that system of that style of fighting, but then the more they sparred, eventually just clicked, and then he was just beating everyone. May not be James. I'm not sure, not too sure. But so how for a style which is so dependent, not so dependent, but has a lot of reflexes to it. How long would you give someone to say, "Oh, this is the style I'm teaching"? Someone being taught a Philly shoulder roll. How long would they give it before they think, "Okay, I don't have the reflexes to do this," especially with that low lead hand and that shoulder roll?
I'm probably gonna know relatively quick. It just depends how much time I have to work with that person. Like if I get a kid at 8 years old, I mean, I got 10 years before he turns professional. I got a long time to try to develop it if I think that it's something he can learn. But if I'm working with a guy who's already an active professional and he's not picking it up right away, then I'm probably going to leave it alone and just focus on what he's good at. It all depends on how much time I have with that particular athlete and what his natural inclinations are, his natural tendencies are. I'm going to pay attention to that during his sparring. So it just depends. But one thing I will say is, I think there's levels to guys who do the shoulder roll. So for instance, me, I could do the shoulder roll, but I'm not going to try to shoulder roll against a top level guy if I get in the ring with him, right? Like I might do the shoulder roll against a guy I feel that I could do it with, but there's certain guys that I know I ain't trying that shit with him. So I think there's levels of your opposition. So for instance, you might be good enough to pull the shoulder roll off in certain fights. Other fights, we're gonna just keep it simple. So I think there's no problem with a fighter who works on it for the rest of his career, but he has to be smart enough and his coach has to be smart enough to know you could do it against this guy, you could do it against that guy, et cetera, et cetera. You should never put yourself in a box and say, never do that, never try that, never work on that. Because it's like, listen, how are you ever going to get better at something if you don't work on it? So I think that a fighter, if they want to learn how to shoulder roll, they should work on it for the rest of their career. Honestly, just work on it. But also be smart enough to know who you can and who you can't pull that shit off with. And I just think that, listen, Floyd Mayweather's shoulder roll is one of the best shoulder rolls you're ever going to see in history. But there's a lot of other fighters who did the shoulder roll, not as good as Floyd, but they did it for their particular level. So the shoulder roll is a technique every fighter could use, but it just depends on the level of opposition you're dealing with, whether you should use it or not. It's just like being aggressive. You got certain fights where fighters get aggressive and they'll go knock a guy out. But then there's other fights where they're not so aggressive. He's like, what happened to all that aggression? They knew who they could be aggressive with. They know who they can't be aggressive with. So therefore, you play the game accordingly to your opponent.
Yeah, it's a very good point, mate. Because I've studied so many fighters, and if you go back, 40s, 50s, and before that, a lot of guys they were using in the US, they were using a style of fighting which is very similar to the shoulder roll. They were catching, parrying shots, turning that shoulder for the right hand. So, but again, not all of them were world beaters. So it's precisely the point you raise. You're totally right there. Well, which also leads to my next question: are there any fighters you advise or recommend to study? Do you have any favorites? Any favorite? Not Philly Shelb. Any style of fighting. Do you have any favorites you like to study?
Oh, hands down, Floyd Mayweather, man. I think Floyd Mayweather is one of the best fighters to look at and study. He is a phenomenal boxer. He won't get the flowers he deserves till he's no longer here. But Floyd Mayweather does everything by the book, man. And watch his whole career. Don't just watch him when he got older and when he started to pick, his last 6 fights. Watch Floyd Mayweather from the beginning to now, study his skill set, and you'll see a guy that could do it all. A guy that could fight in the pocket, a guy who could box from the outside, a guy who could shoulder roll, a guy who slips punches, a guy who stays calm under pressure, a guy who has dealt with many different styles. Hands down, one of the best people to study is Floyd Mayweather Jr. Other than Floyd Mayweather, of course, you can learn a lot from James Toney. Without a doubt, he's another guy who can stay in the pocket with you, make you miss, make you look silly. You know, there's just an abundance of talented fighters, man, over the years, man. But for me, guys that have that shoulder roll slick style, you know, James Toney, Floyd Mayweather. You know, you can learn from Canelo Alvarez. I think he does some good stuff. Very tricky, very good sneaky feints. As a current guy, you can learn from Shakur Stevenson right now. Certain guys you can learn from now and in the past. I would just look up the greats, man. You can learn something from everybody. You can learn from Roberto Duran. I think Roberto Duran's underrated for his boxing skills. A lot of people would talk about him being aggressive, but man, that guy was slick. He used to do some slick stuff. Same thing with Julio Cesar Chavez, another guy who was slick that doesn't get the credit for being slick. People remember these guys as guys that'll hurt you, but these were slick fighters, man, that don't get credit for being slick. You can learn from Winky Wright, man, how to keep your hands up, elbows in, and lean from shots and win a world title. You know, you can learn from Roy Jones Jr., man, one of my favorites to watch throw the right hand lead. He used to shoot that right hand lead, and he used to roll out, and he used to pop shot. You can learn how to pop shot from Roy. You know what I mean? The list goes on and on and on, man. There's so many good fighters, man, over the years. Riddick Bowe, another freaking phenomenal heavyweight that could do things like a middleweight, you know, put punches together, combinations together, and whoop your ass, man. Like, he was good, you know. I don't think he's another one that doesn't get credit for being a great, but that's because of his short term at the top.
His prime was short, yeah. But yeah, as you said,
he could fight like Riddick Bowe. A prime Riddick Bowe, give anybody hell. Anybody in history hell, you know?
Yeah, he was my favorite fighter of the 90s. He was Riddick Bowe. I used to get up in the night and watch him fight. As you mentioned, Eddie Futch as his trainer as well. He had Bowe and everything.
Yeah, I used to love Eric Morales. Eric Morales, another guy that you can learn from. Eric Morales, super slick, super intelligent fighter. I think that he's another one that people will forget about. But Eric Morales, man, he could switch, he could fight. He used to keep his hands up. His style's a little bit different than the style that we've been talking about. But Eric Morales, man, he was a fantastic fighter and very, very crafty. Like, you didn't know what punches he was going to throw, and he just throw them. And then you think he's done, and he keep throwing. He could brawl and he could box. So I liked Eric Morales as well. So there were a lot of good guys over the years, man. So many that if I could sit here and give you a book, man, study them all. Because you can learn something from everybody. Study them all. That's my best advice. Study them all.
Yeah, study all the greats. They all pick up things from each other as well, don't they? So, yeah. Okay, so Puerto Rico, great history of boxing. So who are your favorite Puerto Rican boxers, and who do you think are the best ever Puerto Rican boxers? I mean, there's so many greats. We already mentioned Benitez, Gomez, Trinidad, Cotto, but you've also got guys like Camacho, the Coco Kid as well. So who are your personal favorites, and who do you rank as the best Puerto Rican fighters?
And that's a good one, man. I'm going to have to say, I think Benitez kind of fits my style the best out of all of them. You know, he's a very slick, very, very good boxer. I think Wilfredo Benitez was extremely slick. If I had to study one of them, it would probably be him. Of course, we already mentioned Felix Trinidad. He's the reason I'm here today, talking to you guys. He was the one who inspired me to box. But stylistically, at this point in my career and how I see and view him, he's probably not going to be my choice of who I would go back. And he was just more of an inspiration for me at that moment in time. I tell people all the time, I stopped picking Puerto Rican fighters because they was Puerto Rican the moment Trinidad lost to Bernard Hopkins, because had I known what I know now, I would have seen that coming. But at that moment in time, I was just blinded to the fact that he was a Puerto Rican fighter, and I was just picking him because he was Puerto Rican, and not knowing that Bernard really, I should have known he was going to win that fight if I knew boxing the way I know it now. You know what I mean? And I don't know, man. I've never been a guy that just because I'm Puerto Rican that I just stuck with the Puerto Rican fighters or studied the whole entire history of the sport. But I would say the top three would be for me, Benitez, Trinidad, and I guess I'm gonna have to go with Miguel Cotto because I got a chance to follow his career, but I'm sure there was many others that I didn't get an opportunity to see. Hector Camacho was a phenomenal boxer too. To me, I probably like Camacho's style better than Cotto, honestly. So maybe I'll swap him out for Camacho. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know, man. I guess it's gonna be those four. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have to throw in Camacho in there as well, and that's about it because I didn't get a chance to see the other ones. You know?
So why do you think Puerto Rico has such a rich history of boxing? What is it? Is it something? Is it the culture? What lends itself to producing so many good boxers? Because how many people? It's not like a huge country or a huge population, but disproportionately producing so many good boxers.
Yeah, I mean, I think they say Puerto Rico per capita has the most world champions out of any other place in
Oh,
America,
wow, it was
and
surprising. Yeah.
and you know, I don't know why we chose boxing. I don't know the history of why Puerto Ricans chose boxing, but I don't know, man. I know it's in our culture to be very prideful and very tough people, so to speak. So, like for instance, like if you go into any Puerto Rican community, um, it's not the hardest place in the world to find a fight, right? Like if you go into a Puerto Rican neighborhood, North Philadelphia, the South Bronx, and there's a bunch of Puerto Ricans there and you're looking for trouble, chances are you're gonna find the trouble that you're looking for. It's just like if you go into the black communities here in the United States, right? You go into a black community acting tough, you don't worry, we'll find you some trouble in the black community real quick, just like that. And I just think it's part of the personality trait. People like, we just like it, and I don't know what causes it. I don't know where the tradition came from, but boxing has been an outlet for people like that. Boxing has been an outlet to, it's like an inner city thing. You know, you go to New York City, you go to Philadelphia, you go to, you know, Chicago, Detroit, and all these places, man. We like sports, we like boxing, you know what I mean, and we like hip hop music, we like girls. Like it's just part of the culture. It's just like, I don't know. I wish I had the actual answer for you. All I know is that that's just how it is. And for Puerto Ricans, man, Puerto Ricans are very good boxers, man. But so are other coaches as well. We're not the only one that could fight. You know, there's plenty of other coaches that could box. It's just Puerto Ricans happen to be one of them. And I don't know. I guess it's just part of our rhythm. You know, we like to dance. We like to do stuff like that. And boxing's similar to that. We have rhythm. We have, you know what I mean? We're not scared to fight. So when you put it all together, you got yourself a boxer. You know what I mean?
It's always interesting as we talk about different cultures, different styles of fighting, and then they come together. It's very interesting. So, final question then: who would you rate as the greatest boxers of all time? I always ask this question to coaches, so I'm always intrigued to what the answers are.
The greatest boxers of all time, man. That's
Yeah.
a long list of guys that are gonna. I mean, you're gonna contradict one for the other. That's another difficult one because I didn't get a chance to see every great boxer that ever put on a pair of gloves. So I hate to answer that question biasly because there's guys I didn't get a chance to see. But from what I've seen, I mean, we have to put Floyd Mayweather up there as one of the most talented fighters that we've ever seen box. I mean, the guy has proven it in front of our eyes in real time. We're alive to see it. Probably doesn't get the credit because, you know, of his flamboyancy and the way he carries himself. And I just think that, you know, that brings hatred toward him. But the guy was a phenomenal fighter. Then you have guys like, you know, Sugar Ray Leonard, who was a hell of a freaking fighter too, man. I mean, Sugar Ray Leonard arguably, you know, can be argued as one of the best fighters of all time. I mean, it's just, he's another one that could fight his ass off. You know, of course, we got to mention Sugar Ray Robinson, right? I mean, Sugar Ray Robinson has the track record and the history and the resume to prove that he was one of the best fighters of all time. So we can't leave out guys like Sugar Ray Robinson. And then you, of course, you got the Willie Peps, and like that's what I'm saying. Like I never even seen more than like 2 Willie Pep full fights. I've seen highlights. I haven't sat there and really said, "Oh man, I could tell you when Willie Pep fought this guy, this guy." So it's just like asking me that question is like not getting a complete view from a guy who's seen them all. I didn't see them all. You know what I mean? And I hate to be the guy to give you an answer, but based off who I've seen, you know, I mean, the names that I just mentioned, man, all those guys were super phenomenal fighters. And, you know, And I mean, and then what? And then the heavyweight division never gets thrown into this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll end it here. I think we've overrun a little bit as well. So really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day and coming on to the podcast and giving your views and telling me about your story. Yeah, so it's been great speaking to you. And again, as I said, I was following your work before I ever came onto Instagram. So then to get the opportunity to speak to you, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you and learn more from you again. And I'm sure continue learning from you as well. I mean, you're doing a great job, everything you do, both online and in the ring. So yeah, wish you all the best and more success to you as well. And yeah, I'm sure we'll keep in touch. And because I'll be watching your videos again as always. So, it's been great talking to you again. Again, I really appreciate you coming on and giving your time to come speak to me. Really appreciate it. And yeah, keep on doing what you're doing. I mean, you're doing great work.
Thank you, man. You as well, man. You got a bright future in what you're doing. So just stay consistent. And I'm sure I'll see you as one of the biggest boxing interview channels out here, man. Just keep on going, man. You know what I mean? You're on your way.
Yeah, cheers. Appreciate it. Hopefully you'll see me in the ring as well, because I'm a pro coach as well. So putting some of your tactics into the ring as well.
Absolutely, man.
The UK style of Coach Anthony.
That's okay. That's all right. Listen, you gotta keep it going, man. Who do you work with as a pro?
So one of my guys is Hassan Kashif. He's made his debut in May. He made his debut, so he'll be fighting again probably in February. We've got some younger guys coming through as well, Jamie Beckett and Zan Masood as well. I just worked with someone called Anis Taj. He's not one of my fighters. He's trained by Josh Brennan, but I worked with him for one of his fights. So yeah, just to sort of getting the ball rolling now. One thing after another, hopefully. So as you said, so those things happen quickly. I'm hoping those sort of things after 5 years of hard work, the ball starts rolling. But
that's how it happens, man. Just keep on working, man. You'll get it.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Appreciate your time again. Thank you so much. And yeah, let's keep in touch. And I'll upload this soon as well. Better get onto it now.
Can't wait to see it, man. Thank you.
Take care.